You're listening to Salford City Radio 94.4 FM, the Friday Sports Show, with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi. And we are very fortunate to bring you many guests on this show. We bring you news from the local area and around the world. We've had some fantastic guests on the show, some of the world's best athletes, sports people, footballers, people who work in the world of sport. We've also had our latest segment speaking to some of the world's most influential people in the field of psychology and related fields. Today we have a really inspiring story, a really fascinating story, and we're talking to an athlete who had the world at her feet, will have had the world at her feet, unfortunately, and she'll sort of talk us through it. She suffered from a condition she's going to talk more about and raise awareness. It's an inspiring story, and how she sort of bounced back from the situation she was in to live a life as best as possible. And Julia Brouwers, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm pleased to be here.
Yeah, it's a really powerful story, and sort of really want you sort of the listeners to get a feel of sort of where you're coming from and how you were a top swimmer in the Netherlands, looking forward to perhaps going on to represent the Netherlands in the Olympics that have got a strong traditional swimming team, and just tell us a bit about what it was like as an athlete for you. I mean, your life before you got this sort of diagnosis of the condition that we'll talk about on the show.
Yes, definitely. So, like you said, I used to be a swimmer on quite a high level. I became a Dutch champion with relays. And, my life looked like I woke up every day around 5 o'clock, went to the swimming pool, did my trainings. After I went to school, after my school, I went back to the swimming pool to train another few hours. Besides that, I also used to train in the gym, of course, to train my muscles. And it looked like I had everything. Everything was going all right in my life. I had nothing to complain about, which I didn't know back then, obviously. But yes, sadly, one day to the other, I was just trying to stand up in class, and my legs didn't work anymore. And that was 2 weeks before my Dutch national championships were gonna start. So my first reaction was, you must be kidding, right? Because this is the worst timing in the world, literally. I was just scouted to be one of the new talents in the Netherlands, in the Dutch national team. They wanted to see how I was gonna do the next championships and to see if they could get me into the Dutch national team. So it was a really important time. And then all of a sudden my body kind of gave up, or it just failed on me, like I always say.
I mean,
and
I mean, at that point there, it's really. I mean, at that point there, I mean, your aspirations are to sort of go all the way and swim at the Olympics, and we know that the Dutch have always had a really strong traditional swim team as well, and at that point there, sort of 2 weeks before the championships, what are your thoughts? I mean, were you thinking that you recovered? Were you aware that something was really something really serious was going on at that point, Julia?
At that point, I think I didn't took it as serious, because obviously, as a athlete, all you're thinking about is your goal, the things you have to do for it, and you're living truly up to the moments where you have to really deliver. So at that moment, I think even when I was paralyzed from my hips to my toes, I still thought, okay, fine, we're gonna fix this, and in 2 weeks' time I'll be there. It wasn't until I think I went to the doctor and he really said, okay, no swimming for you the next couple of weeks, where I was like, wait, couple of weeks? You mean couple of days? He said, no, couple of weeks. And then it really hit me, and I was like, okay. But still, I think I was still in a survival mode, so I was still thinking, okay, doesn't matter what he's gonna say. I'm stronger than this. I can probably take a good rest and come back stronger. Until the pain didn't go away, the problems didn't go away, and then after a good week, it really hit me that I had only 7 days left, and I knew I wasn't gonna make it anymore.
Mm-hmm. And so, when the championships sort of, you knew you weren't going to sort of, be able to compete at the championships. You had to withdraw. How did you sort of feel then, Julia? What was it like? I mean, you obviously trained for many years to get to where you are, and to be that level. And was it sort of, devastating for you? Did you think, well, maybe the next championships, can come along? And what were your sort of thoughts then?
I was definitely focused on the next championships. I was thinking in my head, okay, whatever happens now, I should take. Obviously, I was super, super sad and frustrated. It was also, all of a sudden I couldn't even walk. So my energy inside my body, it was so crazy because I was in a wheelchair right away. I couldn't walk. I used to really the first. I think 2 months, I was sitting downstairs every night until 3 a.m. because I literally couldn't sleep. I had so much energy. I used to always put my energy into my trainings, and then all of a sudden there was nothing to do for me. And I really remember me sitting watching TV in the morning until 3-4 o'clock, not being able to go to school. My whole life kind of collapsed. Wow. And because you're so young, you don't think this is going to be something that really is going to change your life, You think, okay, it's going to be something that I have to deal with now. We're going to try to stay positive. We're going to try to fix it. That's the main thing that was in my head. We're trying to fix it. We're going to try to look for the right doctors. There must be something. Maybe it's just the stress. Maybe it's just my body I had trained too much. I really didn't know what was going on. So all I wanted to do is find the solution for my problem. And of course, the other championships were still in my head. I was still thinking, okay, it might not be London. It will be Tokyo in the next couple of years. That was definitely already in my head. And since I was so young as well, I think I definitely still had a vision of really trying to aim for my goal and to make it come true.
It's really powerful stuff there. How you dedicated a huge proportion of your life to sort of representing your country at the Olympics and doing the best you could, and then sort of seeing that dream slip away from you, and sort of, but as well as that, the uncertainty of what was going on too. And just so our listeners are aware, the condition itself is EDS, and they're probably wondering what the condition is, and what is so eventually you sort of got the diagnosis, and that would have been sort of really difficult to. I can imagine it would have been challenging to sort of because it is a rare condition, but for our listeners, the EDS is sort of condition. Tell us a bit about the condition. Obviously, not from a medical perspective, just from your understanding of it.
Yes, definitely. I'm not a doctor, so I think I can't find the right words to describe them medically. But so EDS, it's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it's a disease where your joint, you have a huge joint hypermobility, which means that it increased a range of joint movements. And right there, what happened in my body is that my bones didn't stay in place anymore. So not only in my hips, but also in my knees, in my shoulders, kind of like subluxations started to happen all the time. That comes with a lot of pain in my muscles and my bones, both nerve pains and stabbing pains. But the weird thing with my case specifically was that it all started in my shoulders and my hips, but I thought that was just gonna be from swimming, from the hard training. But as soon as I really focused on my hips, and in the end I had surgeries for them as well, I thought I was going to recover, and then my whole body was going to be fine as well. Because once you have a problem in your hip, It could be that you're standing wrong. You have to you move your body the wrong way. Yes, so that could move upwards. That would be a logical explanation why my shoulder would also hurt and my neck and all these things. So that was all the time that I thought that was going on, which was not true in the end, because after surgery nothing happened in my body. It only got worse.
Wow.
What's really typical for EDS is as well that you have a very smooth and velvety skin, and it bruises very easily. Like I only have to hit my shoulder, for example, or my arm somewhere very, very gently, and it already becomes becomes blue and red and all these things.
And so you said, I mean, because you sort of swam at a high level and trained really hard. When did you sort of notice that something wasn't right, Julia? When did you sort of begin to notice? I mean, obviously sometimes it's easy to sort of think, well, maybe, like you mentioned, there's overtraining, and it could be, shoulders, and obviously swimmers pick up, shoulder injuries and so on and so forth. At what point did you start to think, well, something's not quite right here in terms of how you felt?
That must have been when I was swimming, and my shoulders just it really became an issue. And I was I had such a high hypermobility in my body, which my trainers always thought it was perfect, because that means that you can just reach a little bit longer in the water. You can just extend your arms a bit wider. But in the end, for example, I could never really do crawl in the right way. And it always had become an issue between me and my trainer, because he got so frustrated, like, okay, Julia Brouwers, you're literally the only person in the whole swimming field that cannot do crawl the right way. What is going on? Are you just too stubborn? Do you just don't want to do it? Why are you doing this? It really became kind of almost like a joke, because he thought I was just messing around with him. But it was just something that I physically wasn't able to do. So I visited a doctor around when I was 11, and that doctor told me that, okay, with your body, the way that it works, you will actually never be able to swim, and you were never able to do the things that you have done. And that was really something that was shocking to me, because I was like, okay, what do you mean? I'm in the middle of getting some great goals, and I know I wasn't at that time. I was always becoming third, so I was never like the greatest champion, but I knew I had it in myself. But then when I talked to this doctor, he said, with your body, we can see that it's all your mentality, because your body is actually not able to do to practice swimming in the way that other swimmers are doing.
Wow.
So that was really an eye opener for me, and I think when I look back on it, I should have taken that doctor seriously. But of course, that's the worst thing you want to hear when you're young. You have goals, and my trainer believed in me. I believed in myself. My family was there to support me, and so when he told me and my parents that, we were just like, oh, okay, we're a doctor. Why would he say that? It's weird. I'm so young. Funny, but then at least I had an explanation for my trainer why I couldn't do the crawl. But then in the end, when I look back, that was actually the first thing first sign where I would have had, if I acted seriously on it, maybe I could have prevented from going to a wheelchair really quickly. But of course, that's like talking now. We don't know.
Of course,
I think
of course, and it's a difficult thing. And I mean, you had this aspiration to be compete at the highest level, and you're on course to do so. And it's just a tough decision to make. And I suppose, in one sense, you mentioned there the episode you had at school where you sort of were struggling to stand, and I mean that in itself would have been really traumatic in one sense. Did you sort of at that point sort of speak to anyone from a mental point of view, Julia, in terms of, did you have anyone to sort of speak to in terms of mentally to sort of help you along with what you were going through?
I didn't have that until 2 years later, I think, 2-3 years later, and that's actually how I got through the whole process. Is still, sometimes I wonder still about it, because when I think I never really realized that I was never going back into the pool until 2-3 years later. So the whole 2-3 years, I was still thinking that I was going to recover from something. You know, after surgery, they always say, okay, you're going to recover, you're going to go into rehabilitation, and then we're going to train your muscles, you're going to come back stronger, it's going to be all fine. So I think until 3 years later, from that first time that in school my body collapses, until then I didn't have anyone to talk to. And when I did started to talk, I think it started when my parents, at one point I was so weak. I've had my surgeries, and my body didn't recover. And I think when I look back on it now, I would have described it as a depression for sure. My parents were so worried, because they were like, okay, but the doctors say nothing is wrong with you. Why don't you go back onto the normal life? Why don't you go back, go to school, you know, all these things. So they were kind of very worried, because they don't see me as that person, because obviously as a swimmer and as a professional athlete, you're super motivated and you always want to go for it. But at that time I was so inside my head, I never really had dealt with the loss of something, that I was just so exhausted all of a sudden that I couldn't even find the motivation to my body was so tired, I couldn't even find the motivation and the energy to get out of my bed some days. And that was really when my parents said, okay, tomorrow morning you go to a psychologist and you're going to talk about this. And the funny thing that came out of that talk was actually that my psychologist said to me, hey, but I don't think you're the crazy one here. I think there's actually something wrong with you, because mentally you seem quite strong and all right. And I think we really have to go back to the doctors and to see if they can't find the diagnosis, you know.
Cool.
And after that point, it still took me 5 more years to actually find the diagnosis. So it was a long journey. Yeah.
So from the point where you had the episode at school where you struggled to stand,
yes,
Julia, it took 5 years to get the diagnosis.
From that point, it took 7 years.
7 years from the point. So 7 years from the point where you sort of struggled to sort of stand at school, and you knew something was sort of wrong, and you were struggling to sort of walk thereafter to get a diagnosis. And I can imagine, obviously, that being a rare condition, it would be challenging to get the diagnosis in one respect. Not that I'm a medical person, but I can sort of understand from the point of view that there would be a challenge there. But that in itself must have been really, really difficult to deal with. I mean, what was sort of going through your mind, sort of thinking, I don't know what this is, and that must have been really, really difficult to deal with.
Yes, definitely. And in the first few months, really, I used to sometimes lay in my bed and just be quiet and just think like, hey, is it really that I feel pain at this moment? Am I not just faking it? Is this not just something that's in my head? Because I started to doubt myself so much, because doctors said, hey, there's nothing wrong with you. We think you're fine. They couldn't find anything. The surgeries went okay. So the problem must have been solved. And at that point, if doctors tell you, hey, we don't know what's going on, you really think you're just a crazy person, Wow. And I think that was the most tough situation I've ever had in my life, that you at one point even don't trust yourself anymore, and you don't even know what's going to be true with your body. You can't even rely on your body. I think the connection that I lost with my body was the toughest I've had to go through. Definitely, yes.
I can imagine in one sense the diagnosis, as devastating as it would have been for you, would have been a bit of a relief too, Julia, to sort of know that, okay, it's not in the mind here. I have got a condition here. Did you sort of feel a bit of a relief when you got the diagnosis finally, to say, okay, well, there is something wrong here?
Definitely, I was super happy. The first few months, I was so happy. My dad and I, even the moment we found out, we even went for sushi, my favorite food, and we went for sushi to literally celebrate. And I also think at that point I didn't know what was really going on. I didn't know this was going to be something that was not going to go away, and that there is no cure for it. At that point I was nothing but happy. I was like, okay, of course it sucks in kind of way that this is what I have to go to deal with. But on the other hand, I finally know what it is, and I'm not crazy.
Yeah,
I could finally trust myself again.
Mm-hmm.
And so, also with. Yes, sorry.
And so, like, for the diagnosis, was it? I can imagine you'd seen a lot of different medical professionals who had different opinions. And how did you finally get the sort of diagnosis for such a sort of rare condition? How did they finally sort of were able to map it out? I know it's difficult, you know, from a medical perspective. I'm not, obviously we're not medical people, but just generally, you know, you're an expert on your own condition. You sort of know what you've experienced. But in terms of the diagnosis, were there a number of tests they had to do that eventually sort of, you know, came to the conclusion this is what it was?
Yeah, just to be clear, also what you said, we're not medical people, and I think with this specific with EDS, it's super difficult because there are a lot of people that have the symptoms but have different kind of symptoms as well, which makes it super hard for doctors to see, like, okay, one patient comes to me and has like this 3 symptoms but has another 3 symptoms added, you know. So I think that was the main struggle. That is the main struggle for people with EDS, that they have the same symptoms, but then like maybe 5 or 10 symptoms are added, and they can all be diverse for everyone, and that makes it super hard.
I can imagine there's a lot of different conditions too with similar symptoms as well, and so it's almost like you know, a process of eliminating other conditions it could be. So you would no doubt. So did you do a lot of different tests for different conditions too, Julia?
Yes. Yes. They first thought I had rheumatism, and fibromyalgia had been brought to the table. I went to 89 different doctors.
Wow.
In that 7 years. There was a time where I went to different doctors, maybe like 4 a week, because obviously coming from a sports background, and my dad being very passionate about it as well, very worried about his daughter, obviously. He really took me to any place. He was like, I don't care if it's the last thing I'm gonna do while I'm alive, but we're gonna make sure that you will have either a diagnosis or a treatment, you know. So I had to do a lot of tests, and in the end, we found the diagnosis on the internet, actually, on Google, when my dad was just really going insane at one point, when the doctors really said to me, okay, sorry girl, I know you're super young, but we can't do anything for you anymore at this moment. He was like, okay, let me see if there's no one, like, on the internet, it's such a wide thing now, maybe there's someone that has written something, so we can just fill in your symptoms and see if it matches, you know. And then we read an article about a girl with EDS that did a study about it, and we were reading it, and we were like, hey, these are actually my symptoms, and these are actually things that I'm dealing with as well. So could this be it? You know, obviously we're not doctors, and I would not recommend to always go on Google. Definitely not. That's not my message. But my message really is, if you feel like something is wrong in your body, believe yourself and try to find the right people. You know. And because obviously it's not the fault of anyone in this case. It's just super difficult.
And that sort of, through doing that, did that lead you to sort of find an expert in the field? Yes. And they were able to sort of like have a look and see and sort of come to that sort of conclusion. So there must be
and at that point we weren't sure that it was really EDS, of course, but we just had a strong feeling, and then we went first. We went to a physiotherapist, and the person that saw me, he was specialized in EDS, and he was like, "Oh, you definitely have it, girl. I can see it from behind. I can see it from a distance." And I was like, "Oh my God, really?" And then obviously that didn't assure us anything. But then we went to a I can't pronounce the word in English. Sorry. Yes, exactly. So we went there, and he really did like a DNA test and all these things, and then it really became super clear.
And I suppose sort of, you know, we sort of spoke off air, and you sort of mentioned one of the things is to raise awareness, and I mean there could be potentially a lot of people out there who've got similar, not to say they've got similar symptoms to you, they've got EDS, but it's one of them really where, you know, like you've mentioned before, I mean you said that, you know, they suggest it could have been arthritis, it could have been fibromyalgia and so on and so forth, and you know, I think raising awareness is a good thing, because obviously, the sort of trials and tribulations that you went through, and to sort of get some sort of closure, to have the test done and to know where you are. And is that one of your goals, to raise awareness, Julia, for people who are sort of in that sort of limbo, not knowing what's going on, and to sort of raise awareness? Yeah.
Yes, that's my one of my main goals. I think it's super important, because I read on the internet that my doctor once told me as well that the average it takes the average time period it takes for a person to get diagnosed with EDS is 10 to 20 years, and I just think that's insane. I do think that it's getting shorter and shorter. The period is getting shorter and shorter because it gets well known, and therefore a lot more people will have it that first thought maybe they had something else, that now are being diagnosed with EDS. But what comes with it is I'm a person that I can walk behind my walker for a short distance, but I also, for long distance, I have to sit in my wheelchair. And coming from a sports mentality, always feeling super strong in your body, feeling super, confident, moving around and all these things, I had to, from one day to the other, I had to experience how it is to be disabled. And I think in work life, in personal life, and all of these things, it can be such a struggle that I really would like to I'm busy creating my own website to really focus on how can I help these people that go through the same, and maybe not have the same disease, they could have different things, but in the end it's still, when you see a person in their 20s walking behind a walker, I know it's odd, and I know people will stare, and I'm strong enough to just be like, okay, it doesn't matter, we're all different, and maybe I would have taken a look at someone as well. But I know that there are also people out there that are so insecure about it, and I would really, my main goal is to really create like visibility of intersections of disabled people, and then also for companies, and advise them on, okay, how can we foster this inclusion? Because I know it's super hard to go out there for to have a job, to search for a job, when nobody else in the company is disabled. And
absolutely. Yeah. So for you, to influence policy based on your experience, and obviously you've transferred your strong mentality across to life, and know that you've got a number of talents as well that you can sort of apply yourself to as well. And did you find that perhaps the background you had in swimming at a very high level, you sort of transferred that mentality, Julia, across to the situation you're in?
Yes. I think because you're used to not giving up, you're used to deal with setbacks, that made it so much easier for me to deal with this, I think, in some kind of way, because you're used to, give it your all. You're used to, okay, tomorrow's a new day, trying to stay positive. You used to have a goal, and when all of a sudden your health becomes the goal, that it makes it at least in my case, it definitely made it easy for me to not give up and look for everything that I was actually able of, because I know I might be disabled in my body, but I'm not in my mind. And it was hard for me to do like a study, because it's hard for me to go to school every day. And I think when I realized this, it actually all started with a post that I did on LinkedIn last week, and it's almost reached 1 million views. And I think the reason why it reached 1 million views is because people that are disabled might not be able to speak out for themselves. They might have the same struggles, but they might not dare to reach out for help, And that really was a sign for me to say, like, hey, this is something that I am strong enough, or I feel strong enough, I feel like I have the power to speak up for these people, and to at least share my story, and it might inspire companies to even think like, hey, we haven't even thought of inclusion in that way, maybe we should. Hey, maybe we can have a talk to other companies that do this, or hey, maybe we can invite someone, and that would really, if even it changed one person's life, or if even one person is now able to get a diagnosis in EDS, or if even one person is able to get the motivation to actually search for that job and to go behind your behind your dreams and goals, then that would really fulfill me.
Yeah, no, it's really powerful stuff. And just, in case there are people listening who are policymakers and people who hire people at firms and sort of, what are some of the barriers that you've faced from a work perspective, Julia? What are some of the sort of barriers that you sort of faced and the challenges from a work perspective in terms of people's perception?
Well, definitely, I feel like I'm always overcompensating because when I went to my job interview, I went there with my walker, and you're the only one. You can see, okay, I'm the only one. I'm the only disabled one in this company. What will people think of me? They might be afraid, like. As a company, they might be afraid that I will call in sick every day or every week, or they might be afraid that they hire someone that has complications, where it makes it harder to focus on work or deliver. Well, that actually, to prove them wrong, I could see myself overcompensating. But on the other hand, what I've also really experienced is that you, how do I say, it's you're the only one, and so you try to actually. I try to ask in my job interview, hey, is it okay if I work from home sometimes, or at least one day a week? And they really had a problem with it, or they found it hard, and I understand, because it all has to do with trust. But now that actually Corona did bring something positive here, is that now everyone all of a sudden is working from home, and now they see, hey, it shouldn't be a problem. And that was really my biggest relief out of this whole situation, that I'm now able to speak to my manager, for example, and say like, hey, is it okay if I work from home a bit more, because that's what I need in order to be able to deliver the things that I can deliver, because I might not do it in the same time zones. I'm a person that I work sometimes 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, 1 hour in the evening, and I'm not a person that wakes up at 8 and then, or at 7, and it works from 8 to 5 and then stops, because I can't focus for that long as well. And this kind of like flexibility is really, really important. Flexibility is really, really important, and I understand that also for companies it's hard, especially when you have a lot of people and you can't really focus on persons. But I think flexibility, and just to really see the person in front of you for who they are and what they can bring to your company, what they have to offer, that would make it so much easier for everyone to apply. And
absolutely, that's a really powerful stuff. And sort of so making certain adjustments by giving flexibility around the hours and perhaps working from home as well can be quite useful to sort of help manage the condition. Julie, would that be?
Yes.
Is that, for sure. And sort of in terms of yourself, I mean, what does it sort of mean to you to be able to sort of carry on working from a mental point of view? I mean, is it really, really important for you to sort of have that sort of focus, or be able to focus on sort of work and live in terms of how you live your life as well? Is that sort of really important for you?
Yes, the rest is really important for me. Also in my personal life, I have to say no to people a lot, which I find extremely hard, because I'm always in for the fun stuff. Having a disease or having such a thing to overcome, you also makes you realize, hey, how precious life is, and that you want to make sure that you take out everything from your life, because you don't know what's happening tomorrow. And I know that's kind of like a almost cheesy thing that's being said by people, but I think that a lot of people that go through diseases or diagnoses or accidents or all these kind of things, that what I learned from them before was that they view life in a different way. And that's definitely something that happened to me as well. And to come back to your question, I think for me personally, it's for me and for the most people with EDS that I know, it's important to take rest at the right moments, to not overdo, which is extremely hard from where I come from, because in the sports you have to always do a bit extra. You have to always go for the extra mile. You have to always take a step extra, and now I have to take 10 steps back, and I think that was for me personally the most difficult thing that I'm still dealing with and I'm still not succeeding in every day. I'm still learning. I'm still learning to get to know my body, my mind, to really be one with it. I think that's the most challenging part of it.
And sort of, what's the sort of reaction when you mention that you have EDS, Julia? Generally speaking, I mean, sort of, I suppose there isn't much awareness. And what sort of reaction do you get when you mention that? Okay, you have this condition EDS. Do people understand it, or do you need to sort of explain or give them some details about how it works? And
yeah, I definitely have to explain, because people don't understand. I look healthy. From the outside, you would not guess that something is wrong with me, unless I walk behind my walker or I sit in my wheelchair. And I think what also happens is sometimes I'm able, it's all about good and bad days. And sometimes when I have some good days, I can walk a bit more, I can do some things, I can go visit a friend, I can go to a party, I can go out for dinner. But then on my bad days, all of a sudden it can change within an hour, and I will have to go rest, and I will have to stay inside. I'm too tired to do things. And that was definitely something I found really hard, even before my diagnosis, to explain to people, like, hey, and that's why it made it so hard for doctors as well. One day I was able to do all these things, and the next day I wasn't. So people were really like doubting me, like, hey, is this all like a show, or what is it? And that's the hardest part for me to understand from my body as well. So I don't blame it on other people, definitely not. But I think that was the most hard thing to explain to people, like, hey, I have a condition also at work, to say like, hey, I come with a condition, and I know it's not ideal maybe to hire someone with it, but I'm so much more than that. And it's all about what I want to achieve in life, and it's all about what I can do, and I would like to focus on it. So if you give me a chance, please let me prove that I'm the person that I will do a lot of work, and I will definitely go for it. Because if you weren't able to work before, all you want to do is work. And sometimes I hear friends saying like, oh, I have to work tomorrow again, it's Monday, the stupidest day of the week, or the most tough day of the week. And all I think is, hey, okay, I've dreamed of having a job even for so many years. I was always dreaming like, hey, maybe I hope I can one day have a job and also have a fulfillment in life. So that it's only extra motivation actually in the end.
Yeah, that's really powerful stuff. And it seems to me that certainly from the variable, the mindset that you have is really strong. And I mean, you've mentioned there some of the things that you can't do, but I think some of the attributes you've got, Julia, are really, really strong. And I think in some respects your mentality is a lot stronger than many people in society, and you haven't seemed to have let the condition define you. I think you've kind of respected that and got on as much as you can with your life. And how much has mindset been a big thing for you in terms of your mindset? You sort of seem like a really strong, I know that you obviously, like everyone does have their challenges and off days, but how much has your mindset been a factor in sort of living life as close to the way you want to have been?
A huge factor, to be honest. Before I had my periods where I didn't have motivation. I felt super sad for myself. I felt super sorry for myself. I was really in another place than I am right now. And that was also that's where I got my motivation from. Okay, like, hey, if I can change that, and if I in some way overcome my disease, even if it doesn't go away, if I can overcome it, then I would be able to maybe teach other people, or at least tell my story to inspire them on how I did it. And that definitely led me to, I did a retreats in Ibiza, I did a retreat at home, I've gone to coaches, I've gone to psychologists just to get to know, hey, how does it work? And my personal interest is really psychology, and I read a lot of books about it. It's really something I really like to know how does your body works, how does this all connect with each other. And I think my personal interest had really been a benefit in this situation, because it helped me to, I was already looking in that kind of way, So when I found all these books and motivational speakers online and quotes, and that had really helped me during the day, that I would go on my Instagram and follow all these inspirational people, and then I would be like, hey, cool, I want to become someone like that, you know?
And you certainly are, Julia, you know, very inspired. No, for sure. I mean, definitely, I think, you know, the thing is, I think what you seem to have done is sort of, you know, develop some meaning from the situation, and sort of, I think, you know, meaning is really important. And we could have easily been having this conversation about you preparing for sort of, you know, Tokyo, which is sort of cancelled till next year now by the looks of things. But you know, with the way your life was going in terms of a swimmer, but now we're talking about obviously the challenges you've had with, you know, EDS, and you've mentioned there your mindset. One thing that sort of interested, and maybe the listeners would be interested in, who may have EDS or may think they may have it. Is there an association in the Netherlands itself? I mean, this show is generally broadcast in the UK, but yeah, I suppose we can sort of see, you know, what's happening out in the Netherlands as well. And did you guys have like an association, EDS, where people can sort of go and talk about the condition and obviously what they can do to get support and so on and so forth?
Yes, I know we have one. I know the one in the UK is way bigger.
Yeah.
Because in the UK, they, as far as I know, they also have a hospital specialized in it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why also in the UK there are a lot more people with EDS than in Holland.
Mm-hmm.
And although the numbers are going up, that's what my doctor has told me last year.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they have in the Netherlands, they have definitely, and they also have Facebook support groups and all these kind of things, which I personally always found a bit hard because when I first went on these support groups, because the disease is so diverse, it also scared me because I saw people really in their wheelchair for the rest of their lives, and I was like, okay, is this going to be overcoming? You know, if this is going to be my life, then I might rather not take a look at it, and I rather just experience my own thing. And that's also, I think, a powerful message that I would like to say to people. It doesn't matter what your position is and what people tell you is going to happen with your body. It's all about your mind and you bringing positivity to it. Because in the end of the day, we all have a way to survive. We all need a way to look at life and to go through the day. And if it can be with a more positive attitude, then I definitely believe it will bring you so much further. And do not let get you down with other stories and all these things, because it can be very confronting as well. Yes. And I do believe if I stuck to that, then I would have been in a whole different situation right now.
Yeah, and that's really powerful message. And I suppose from your perspective, living lived experience, you have your experience, and obviously what works for you might not work for somebody else, and sort of vice versa. But obviously you're sort of living it. It's a lived experience, and sort of sharing your experience, I think, is a powerful message for people to listen to. And I think what's really, really powerful, Julie, is obviously your age, and you're really, really young when you sort of came across the condition, and the way you sort of bounce back from the adversity is quite a powerful message. And I mean, not just related to sort of this condition, not related to any condition, just in general. Sometimes we have tough days, and we all do, and it's been a tough few months for a lot of people. We've obviously
Definitely.
the pandemic and all these changes, but just to sort of coming from someone like yourself who's sort of at a very young age had your dreams at that point taken away from you, but you've managed to sort of re-navigate your life and to meaning and purpose, and you're doing the best you can. For people, not to give advice, obviously we're not giving anyone advice, but just a bit of an insight in terms of your mindset for people who might be sort of struggling in general. Julia, what are some, you've learned a lot from coaches and obviously your experience and your really strong character. If people sort of struggling with their sort of mindset, what are some things you can sort of suggest that they do, Julia, if anything?
I think personally, what had really affected me in a bad way is social media in some way, because I was only following all the perfect lives, and that really made me so vulnerable and so sad about my own. So I literally did a digital detox and just were like, okay, I'm just gonna be offline for a few months to see what that brings to my life. That really helped. That's something I learned in the retreat, and that really helped me. And then after that, I thought, okay, I don't have to necessarily take it out of my life, but I can also just bring extra motivational things into my life. So that's when I started to follow a lot of inspiring people. Another thing that I could really, what I really did is to try and be thankful a lot more, because I can be a pessimist as well, you know. I have days where I'm complaining to my boyfriend like, oh, this sucks and that's stupid and all of these things, but then it really helps to be positive and to find a meaning in this life. And for me personally, what really helps is also to be able to look at what can I do for someone else. It brings you so much happiness. I've been volunteering in Ghana for 4 months, helping kids in the shelter, and that was really the best experience I've ever had. Just to not be busy with your own problems and with your own things, but just to genuinely be open to help someone else in life. That had really been, that now is really became my new almost obsession, you know. So I read this quote the other day where it says that make sure that when you meet a person, they leave happier than when they first came to you, you know. And I think that's really motivation for yourself, because maybe sometimes you struggle with being happy with yourself or with things you do, but if you walk on the street and you smile at someone and you give a smile back, it already makes your day a bit better, you know. It makes you feel connected.
Yeah, and it's really, really powerful, because you know there are people out there, and life isn't easy, life is challenging, and life throws us sort of curveballs, and no doubt there's people out there who, you know, may end up, you know, getting diagnosed with a condition, or just generally have like a run of bad luck, or lose a job, or whatever. Obviously there's no comparison to losing a job to a condition as such, but you know, equally in saying that, people do have challenges, and I think that the mindset is a big big thing, and you know, not to sort of substitute for obviously medical advice or anything like that, and people got to follow the protocols, but it does give hope in terms of people listening, I think, Julia, to sort of see the way you've sort of dealt with things, and you managed to sort of volunteer and to do the work that you're doing now, and you have a full, you know, rich life, and sort of, it does, I think your message certainly gives people some hope that if we can just adapt and find meaning, and sort of, you know, go about our life and doing the best we can, then there's every possibility we can have the best life possible. And do you sort of keep in touch with any of the swimmers from before, Julie? Did you sort of keep in touch with any of them, or in the did you sort of move on?
Actually, I didn't.
Yeah, so you moved on from them, and
I definitely moved on, because I even never really went back to the swimming pool. I'm still in touch with my trainer, which I really like and appreciate. But the rest, to be honest, I didn't. Also because I felt like there was no other life, you know. So I had to, in order to move on, I really had to let go of it, and to let go of the dream, and to be able to just focus on my new goals. I had to let go of the old ones. And also, to be clear, like, I think one thing we cannot do is compare things, you know. Someone losing their job might just be as effective as my condition was to me, or someone
absolutely, great point.
Anything could, it's all in your mind, and if you happen to not be able to be strong, and that's really fair enough, then depression is way worse than what I'm going through right now. And I've experienced that myself, and it's so easy for people to say, like, oh yeah, you just have to be happy. And when I was depressed, honestly, I hated the people that were saying, oh yeah, just keep on smiling,
no, for
keep being happy,
for sure.
Because
And
you have to focus on yourself and your own feelings.
Absolutely,
that way.
for sure. And I think for me, it's really important that people get the right help if they need to go see someone for their depression, and whether it's a GP, whether they go see like a clinician in that area. Then many conditions have comorbidity. It could be related to the condition itself, or it could be just generally what the person has sort of lost in their life. So absolutely, I think it's really important that they get the right sort of help moving forward. But equally in saying that, I think people who speak like yourself, who have lived experience, are a source of inspiration. I think one thing sort of comes to mind when you mentioned swimming there. I know this is a difficult sort of question to answer at this moment in time, but do you maybe see yourself in the future being a mental skills coach for swimmers, or maybe having a role with swimmers? For you it's something that you sort of moved on from, or would you sort of entertain the idea of some point? I think you'd be really inspiring for swimmers, Julia.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe it might not have worked out from an athletic point of view, but I'm sure someone of your sort of mindset and your experiences and sharing sort of mental skills could maybe contribute towards other athletes sort of going on to fulfill their sort of ambition. Would you sort of see yourself doing it maybe one day, or is it just moved on completely from that?
Well, I did a coaching study, and my main goal was to help people with disabilities, and maybe specializing in kids with disabilities and their parents, because I know that the support system around also really need help in times like this. But with swimming, to be honest, I don't know. I have been last year I was taking a look in the Paralympics. I was like, hey, what if I can make my dream come true this in this way? Yeah. But that was I think in the end nothing more than a thought. Because I would love to go out there and tell my story, maybe to companies, to people that struggle, to any kind of people that need support in this. And I think that will be that's really my dream and my main goal. It always has been my dream to be able to in some way contribute in getting people more happy or happy with themselves, because I also really want to empower people, and especially girls with body positivity. I was always so hard on my body, and now having cellulitis and all these things that girls are complaining about. Now I think all I can think now is, hey, I had a body that worked for me. Why wasn't I grateful for it? So I think I would go that way. I would prefer to go that way rather than going back to the swimming. It might be still a bit too painful, maybe.
Of course, No, that's understandable, and for sure. And I think that it seems like you sort of your life's taken this sort of cause, and you're on your path. But equally in saying that, you can never say never in the future. And I just think it'd be, from a perspective of maybe one day, reaching the Olympic dream. If not as an athlete, perhaps as a coach sometime when the time is ready. It'd be an amazing, story in terms of at some point. But your vision at the moment, Julia, what would you say your vision is now? Is sort of, where do you sort of see yourself from where you are now going forward?
Like I said, I'm starting to create my own website. To first of all share my story in terms of like writing blogs, but also sharing videos about it, like a podcast like ours right now, to share a little bit of, I hope, positivity, to share my story in terms of to be able to inspire people to just look at the bright side of life and never give up, and creating chances for yourself. When you're put in a position when all the chances have been taken away from you, or the chances that you were gonna get, then you should just literally create another chance. And that's really how I see myself right now, to create visibility also, as well, of intersections of the disabled people for companies in the workplace, because now I'm currently working, so I see that in that world. And also my LinkedIn post, like I did last week, really inspired me to go further in this. Maybe write a book, go out on stages. That would be really my dream.
Absolutely, for sure. And
Yes.
in terms of people sort of listening, if and they want to sort of know more about the blog, and do you have any
Yes.
sort of any sort of website that we can point them towards? And have you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, my website will be launched hopefully next week. It will be www.juliabrouwers.com. So just my name, and of course they can always add me on LinkedIn, and so we can stay connected and we can share from there.
Absolutely,
so, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sure that there'll be people out there, sort of policymakers and people who sort of own companies and so on and so forth. It would certainly be useful to sort of hear about your experiences, and I think that the key message is that you've been an instrumental part of many organisations, and I think it's really important because obviously there still is a stigma attached to people who say they've got a disability, but you've proven, Julia, that you are as if not a lot more effective than people who may not be disabled, quote unquote, so to speak. It's sort of a powerful message to people to realise that if there's any thoughts about employing someone who may have a disability and they're not sure about, like you mentioned before, whether they would need time off or whatever, and so on and so forth. I think that the strength of getting someone on board like yourself is a big thing, but also making sure that they can improvise and make the flexible day, to sort of help maybe work around the person, so they can sort of get the best out of themselves is a really key thing. But it's been a really powerful interview, Julia. I'm sure our listeners have been really intrigued to hear what you've got to say. It's been great interviewing you, that's for sure. And I'll certainly, the website as and when it does get up and running, to point them in that direction and see more, and so on and so forth. So I really want to thank you for coming on board the show, Julia. It's been really powerful stuff. So really, really, really great stuff. So that was Julia Brouwers, all the way from the Netherlands, on the Friday Sports Show. Your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, 94.4 FM, bringing you all the news from the local area and around the world. And what a really inspiring story that was, and a really, really powerful story. And I sort of, if you get a chance to check Julia's LinkedIn profile or her website, as and when it launches, it is an inspiring lesson for us all. So fantastic show. I hope you'll enjoy it. As always, do feel free to email us through our Facebook page, any comments, questions otherwise on today's show, any of the shows that we have as well. Bring you all the latest news from the local area and around the world. The Friday Sports Show with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi.